Thank you for watching the CEO Barbecue. My name is Antonio, and today I'm going to BC to look for copper and gold while also talking to Craig Perry, who is, of course, the CEO of Vizsla Copper. Vizsla Copper is a copper gold molybdenum exploration company with multiple copper gold exploration assets in British Columbia. Hopefully, all stuff that we can talk about in the conversation today. Before all that, though, I would like to warn you that we have received monetary compensation for the production of this video from the company that's being interviewed. Please understand that this channel is a business that sells content producing services to companies, which means you cannot rely on this video for research, and you should treat this as an advertisement instead. Research is conducted by reading the company's official filings, which you can find on setterplus.ca. Please only watch this if you know what you're doing. This interview is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators because mineral exploration, development, and mining is a very tough business where failure is the norm. This is going to be a conversation that's general and impersonal in nature, containing forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, so before continuing on, please talk to an investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital may be at risk. If you're not 100% sure you understand 100% of those disclaimers that I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, the company is listed as VCU on the Venture Exchange in Toronto, where an average of 206,000 shares trade daily, and where I can see a 52-week high of 12 cents and a 52-week low of 5 cents. With 228 million shares outstanding and a $12.5 million market cap, today this is a 5.5 cent stock. But I'm not doing the full company overview in here because Craig and I have already done a couple of deep dive interviews about the company and about the man behind the company himself. And there is also going to be a playlist on our channel where you can go and watch all of those previous conversations if you haven't yet. There also isn't a new financial statement, to my knowledge, to go through yet, but hopefully we can talk a little bit about the financial position and stuff like that in the interview as well. Today, though, Craig, I want to talk about what happened in 2024, what you plan on doing in 2025, as well as your two new news releases from earlier this month. So loads to go through, and let's maybe kick it off with 2024 in review, because although you had an active year on the corporate level, there was drilling, there was project deals, there was a lot happening. The stock price fell consistently through the year, starting at around 14 cents and closing at 5. What's happening there? Why did it go that direction?
Yeah, good question. Good to be back on, Antonio. And I
Thank you.
think, the market for juniors, particularly sort of copper juniors, continues to struggle. I think, there's no real impetus. You are, and we mentioned off air there, a few things that you've invested in, a couple of things that I've invested in that have done well over the last 12 months. I suppose we're starting to see a bit of a return to a normal trading pattern whereby when you do make a discovery or get a good result, you'll see a share price increase. We haven't seen that for a couple of years, not really since 2021, 2022. So it's been a frustrating market, I think, for everyone. In the junior space, particularly, a little bit different. Some of the other things that we've seen, things that I'm involved in, Skeena, Vizsla Silver, of course. Those developers with projects that are clearly of very high caliber have all done very well. Artemis is another good example. Skeena, I think we started the year at about $4. We're trading up around $13.50 today. Vizsla Silver, we started the year somewhere around $1.30. We're now up near $3. So the developers are really coming on, and you've seen the majors performing pretty well. I think you've seen sort of Newmont, a lot of M&A kicking off as well. Newcrest being an example. We've seen Gatos, Cisco, various other companies taken out. So you're starting to see everything trend in the right direction. In that space, it does take, I think, quite a bit of time to trickle down to the juniors, and it's a stock pickers market at the moment. But you can do well if you pick the right stocks, as you have with a couple of things you're involved in there. But generally, I think that there's been sort of still a market malaise for juniors. You're not seeing a huge amount of money come in. Various people have commented in recent times that you've got gold at all-time highs. Silver's starting to trend up. A lot of people are forecasting a silver squeeze. Very good for Vizsla Silver, of course. And the copper market's starting to trend up. You're seeing some unusual things happening in the copper market at the moment. And the copper price actually isn't too far off an all-time high, and you wouldn't know that from looking at the junior sector. So I think we've still, I would have thought by now we would have started to see juniors trend up significantly. You're starting to see a positive reaction to positive news in the junior space, but it's still sort of a very, very tough market and a stock pickers market at that end of the spectrum. I think that will change as we see metal prices really dramatically increase over the coming years. Just on the copper market, of course, copper price today is about $4.14 this morning. Starting to trend up. We were a couple of weeks ago down around $4. I see CIBC put out their copper forecast deck a few days ago. They've got copper at a long-term price of $4.20. This year they're forecasting, I think it's about $4.45 a pound of copper. And yet the price is still well below those numbers. So and copper futures are significantly higher. I think copper futures, month-long copper futures are about $4.45 today versus a copper price of $4.14. So, some strange things happening in the market there, I suppose. More generally, you're starting to see that macro, the big themes of electrification, data center build out, particularly in the US, starting to have a real impact on demand. Of course, not much new supply coming on, so it's still a very challenged supply side we see. And then you're starting to see China talk about quantitative easing and really realizing that they further need to pump prime their economy, which is always very, very good for copper. So, and, on most metals, we're seeing very low inventories. I think copper's, at a year-long low in Shanghai. Silver is another good example whereby inventories are dwindling and diminished. So I think we're in for a very, very good year. I think you'll continue to see those mid-tier producers and developers perform very, very well as metal prices start to rise and as people sort of get behind their desks again after the Christmas period. But look out. I think it's going to be a great year for copper and a great year for silver. So we're in the right place with both Vizslas.
Do you think it is a lack of buyers that is causing the movement in Vizsla, or is it? I mean, you talk to shareholders constantly, right? You go to conferences, you talk to them on the phone. Is someone calling you up and saying like, "Hey, we have to, sell our positions"? Do you have large sellers in the story, or is it really a lack of buyers?
Yeah, good question. Look, I think with Vizsla Copper specifically, of course, we did that deal to secure the Poplar project last March. So that's really only 10 months ago that we completed that transaction. That saw the issuance of 90 million shares or 89 million shares to shareholders of Universal Copper. I think we've seen quite a bit of that stock come out. There's people been in there locked up for a long period of time or waiting to see what happens there, using that as an exit. So that's artificially dampened the price. We did 2 financings during the year, including a $5 million flow-through financing. You can, flow-through money can be tough at times. And sometimes you see that flow through stock out, and I think it come out. And I think we've been eating quite a bit of that here in recent times. So I think that's probably weighed on the share price. A lot of people I spoke to when we did those financings and then the back half of last year, looking for bargains in the copper space. When we did our last financing, we were certainly that. I think we've just about halved in share price since we did the last financing, which is obviously very disappointing. But I think people are still very skittish. You saw the copper price really take off back in sort of March, April, May last year. We saw all-time highs. We got the copper price was just a bit above $5. That really engendered a lot of buying and a lot of interest and supported the financings we did then. And then since that time, you've seen the copper price drift off. So that's definitely weighed on things. I think people are sort of still quite skittish and not convinced that there's going to be a rally in any juniors just yet. And so we've seen some of that, some selling pressure come from all of that. But that's, so that's disappointing to see always. But that said, it throws up some bargains. So I've been buying when I can, when I'm free of information, free of any news that we need to get out, which we were yesterday. I wade into the market and buy some stocks. So I bought 1 million shares myself at 5 cents yesterday, which I like to say I didn't really buy it. I stole that stock. It was so cheap. So we'll sit in the market and keep buying the stock ourselves. I think it's an extraordinary bargain. The fundamentals of the company haven't changed. We've got 4 billion pounds of copper in resources, nearly 2 million ounces of gold, a lot of molybdenum, as you mentioned up front there as well. So there's a lot of metal in the ground that isn't going anywhere. And continues to provide leverage to rising metal prices, and we're starting to see that take off again now. And it's nice to wake up and see the copper price up another few cents today, and starting to trend up. So I think interesting times for the junior space. I wouldn't say it's terribly great right at the moment, but as you've sort of pointed out, you can, with good work and discovery, get some good results and see prices jump. There's a few of those that I've seen in my portfolio outside of my core group of companies, and one of the big wins that we've seen is Founders, who look like they're up to a sort of 10 million ounce plus gold project down there in Suriname. So, some of those things, some of those discoveries are really starting to improve. And so, Antonio, with that in mind, we've really sort of looked hard at what our plans are for this year. I suppose you're loath to raise money down at these sorts of levels. We continue to write big checks ourselves whenever we do a financing, which I think is very, very important. And some of the things that happened last year, I suppose it's sort of disappointing to see the sell-off. We've had our best drill campaign to date. I think down at our Deerhorn and Megabuck targets, we saw a real improvement in our understanding of the high grade zones, and we had some very sort of good hits there. 100 meters plus at plus 1% copper equivalent. So really good hits, demonstrating that system is open to the south, which was a great surprise for us. I would expect to grow that high grade resource over the coming years as we continue to drill that out. At the southeast deposit, we found mineralization higher up closer to the surface than we expected as well, within 60 meters of the surface, some high grade hits there. So the project is delivering for us. The market isn't.
I'm glad you brought up that you've been buying the stock yourself, because typically when CEOs tell me, hey, our stock is a bargain, which of course all of them do, I'm like, hey, why don't you buy some? And you actually did. So you're kind of making my job easier here. Come time to raise capital again this year, though, how are you thinking about raising it? Because again, last year raised capital twice, two different financings, non-brokered one in April, 2.5, and then a brokered one, which ended up being almost 5.5. That's the flow through that you mentioned. So would you go for all of the money you need all at once? I suppose not, because you said the price is low now, but how do you look at raising capital strategically at this point in the market?
Yeah, look, it's a time where you do a fair bit of sort of soul searching. What do we want to achieve? Firstly, you've got to look at what the opportunities are, and I suppose what we've recognised is the market is rewarding discovery. So this year we're very much going to focus on, rather than expanding those high grade zones, we're going to go out and test some of our other targets. We've got some of the best porphyry targets I've ever seen on the books here. We put out news yesterday of our Poplar South target, which we've now got IP over. So we've really firmed up that target. I think that's a better than even chance that will be a porphyry discovery. Then it becomes a question of tons and grade. So we do want to get out and test that. Of course, we made a discovery at our megaton zone there about 18 months ago. We clipped the side of a porphyry system with some good copper mineralization there. A little bit low grade, but we know that we're off the center of that anomaly and that target, so we want to go and drill further there. We've also got a very large IP anomaly called Great Plains on the Woodjam property. And of course, Woodjam's now, everywhere we go there, we continue to find further mineralization. So it's very clear to us that the Woodjam property hosts a serious cluster of porphyries of differing calibers. But certainly within that, at the moment, there's 33 million tonnes at about 0.7% copper equivalent, and large intercepts of higher grade mineralization. People can check out our website, vizslacopper.com or .ca, to look into that in a little bit of detail. But we know there's high grade on that property, so we really want to get in and further test that megaton target. The Great Plains target's an intriguing one for us, very big IP anomaly to the south of the southeast deposit. So we like to look at that. And then interestingly enough, we've got the ground just north of our CopperView property, it's called, just north of Kodiak's gate zone. And there we've got, the magnetic lineament that trends north-south that the gate zone sits on. The gate zone is, sits within the target is a break in that north-south trending mag anomaly. The north-south and mag anomaly continues on into our property. There's a break in that. We've now done some IP over that break in that mag anomaly, and that's thrown up some very high conductivity. So we're excited about that target as well, and we want to get in and test that. So, this year will be, I suppose what we see is that we've got 4 or 5 wide open goals there, and we want to have some shots on those targets. So this year will be about exploration and drilling for new discoveries. And then, so that with that in mind, we're just going through our budgeting process at the moment. We probably need somewhere around $2.5 million to do all those things, test all of those targets effectively. So you start to form an idea of how much capital you need over the next 12 months to do all of that. Of course, you need some working capital to, complete deals. I should make the point that we announced last week the acquisition of the Rand claim that sat squarely within the Woodjam properties. It's a good looking claim, some nice looking targets there, including the edge of our megaton anomaly. So we like to look at that. So it was good to get that completed. So we'll keep doing those sorts of things. So you need enough money to keep working on those things, keep the team on the pitch, and then work out how much work you want to do during the year. I would say to you, you're very much loath to raise money at these levels. It'd be nice to see the share price higher. I think that we're deep in bargain territory, and hence you've seen me buying stock in the market, and I think you'll continue to see me. I'll continue to be buying stock in the market over the coming months, ahead of a decision as to what to do. So, one of the things we can do is just sit on those properties and not do anything and not spend any further money. Take a very non-dilutive approach. I think that the market and investors forget about you when you take that sort of approach, when you're out there and said that you're going to go keep exploring and drilling, and they want to see you do that. And certainly, internally, we want to keep doing that. That Poplar South target, as I've mentioned in the past, I've been doing porphyry exploration for 24, 25 years now. I've never seen a more textbook, multi-factor, multi-vector anomaly. I think that it's almost certainly going to be a porphyry discovery. So we very much want to get in and test those. So we sort of owe it to ourselves to finance and keep drilling and look for more metal there. But you can only do what the market will support. I suppose we have the advantage that we do have the capability to write big checks and support financings in a major way ourselves. So we'll continue to do that. But it's a tricky one. Do you sit and wait and see and just conserve your capital and hope that the rising tide floats all boats, or do you get out and go hard at it and try and make discoveries and expand those high grade zones? I think the latter is right for us. Certainly, that's what we tell investors. So I don't think you hear a bit of chatter, and if you make the mistake of reading some of those bulletin boards like CEO.ca, you see a lot of negative commentary, but people, investors, those people that write those things on those boards should be under no illusion that we'll continue to finance the company and do what we say we're going to do. We're not going to sit on our hands and hold on and hope for the best.
I
You've
want to
got to
go.
grow shareholder value. You can't sit and hope that it comes to you.
It's true, and I want to go through all four, or should we call it five projects at this stage, kind of one by one, and understand what exactly you're going to be doing there. Just one more thing on the financing, though. How do you want to, like? Are you looking at flow through? Is that what you want to go for? Because of what happened last year, it's not going to be flow through this year.
Yeah, look, well, we do have the advantage. Okay, so access to flow through is very, advantageous here in Canada. Taking too much of it can be a double-edged sword, of course, because some of that flow through can come back out. What we find is if we do flow through ourselves, our core group of guys, my partners, we like to take a lot of flow through ourselves. We sit and hold that stock. I've never sold a share in Vizsla Copper, nor have my partners. But taking too much flow through from some of those bigger flow through funds, you might see some of that come back out at some point in time. So you do have to be careful about that, I think. And unfortunately, when we financed, the copper price was hitting all-time highs. So that allowed us to get that financing away. And then the copper price fell off. Despite putting out good results, you saw sellers into that market because of a loss of faith in the copper price and the copper market over the short term. So that impacts things. A sort of a very granular take on what's going on there in the junior sector, and juxtaposed against metal prices. I think, we would need to raise some hard dollars. We're in a position to write checks for ourselves for that as well, and keep things going. I think this year, as I mentioned, we're looking at probably 2.5 million to test all the targets we want to in a fashion that gives us a non-ambiguous, unambiguous, um, uh, unambiguous outcome for each of those targets, and it's probably 2.5 million. So we don't have to raise too much money to do all that, and I think we'll probably do that at some point in the first half of this year, such that we can hit the ground running come summer. And what I'd really like to sort of see happen, that megaton target that we've got at Woodjam, as I mentioned, I think we drilled sort of, fairly wide intercepts of 0.2% copper at the edge of a porphyry system. We've now done more work over that to understand that target, and we clearly drilled off the center of that target. So, that's a robust target. We know it's a porphyry system. It's a porphyry discovery. We haven't found the center of it. So that's a fairly straightforward thing to test. Won't cost too much money to test that. The really exciting target on the books at the moment, I think, for us, however, is that Poplar South, and we put out news on that yesterday. As I mentioned in the past, when we went out in the field in May, June last year, after we completed the acquisition of Poplar, of course, Poplar has a large resource base there at the moment, at moderate grade, 0.4, 0.45% copper. We know it's a porphyry terrain. There are other porphyries around there. You've got Huckleberry and a bunch of other, Surge Copper's got its Utsa and Berg and Berget porphyries nearby. We know it's a porphyry terrain, porphyry district. Porphyries typically cluster. And then we stumble across in the field, a small historic pit with very high grade copper numbers in it. We then started looking around further and found very strong porphyritic altered rocks. We completed soil geochemistry over the alteration zone and beyond. that found very strong classic zonation of a porphyry target. Copper at the center of it, zinc on the outside and peripheries. So sort of classic metal zonation. Moly at the center. The everything you'd want to see from geochem. Then we completed these IP lines over the top of that. And of course, I should say up front that this was a mag low at the center of a mag high, which is what you want to see because magnetite gets destructed at the center of high grade porphyry cores. And so we're seeing that there. And then we complete the IP, which we put out the news on the other day. And it's a very conductive suite of rocks right at the heart of that target. So I think it's one of the best sort of walk-up drill targets I've seen in the porphyry space in a long time. Every single vector says drill here at the center of that anomaly. So I think, we very much have to get in and test that. I think that's a very good chance of making a discovery this year. And then, of course, I mentioned down there at our CopperView property in the gate zone, near the Kodak's gate zone, good chance of discovery there as well. So I think we'd like to raise enough money so that we can conduct a summer drill campaign over all of those targets and see what we've got.
We're definitely gonna get to Poplar South because its relationship to Poplar is interesting to me as well. But let's maybe take it project by project, which will also have us talking about some of your other recent news releases that have to do with Woodjam. What is the most pressing unanswered question there for 2025, and how much is answering it going to cost you on Woodjam alone?
Yeah, would you, as I mentioned, we could spend a huge amount of money drilling there at Woodjam. There's so much mineralization in that area that, we're yet to close off. Best example being the southern part of the Deerhorn system. We had some great results there last year. 100 meters at a percent copper type numbers close to surface. So we know that's a very fertile, higher grade system there, and we can continue to drill that. The market hasn't rewarded us for that. I think the market's sort of rewarding people for discovery, as we mentioned, as we were talking off mic there earlier. You're starting to see discoveries really sort of have impact on the market. So that the market's sort of trying to tell you something there, that you should focus on trying to find new things just at the moment and not blow your brains out drilling out existing mineralization and infill drilling and extensional drilling. So we're taking that approach here just at the moment. And then Woodjam. Look, it's such a big property area, massive area. So it's sort of now that we've got Rand, it must be about 100,000 hectares. It goes all the way up to the Mount Polly open pit. So it's a huge area in a fertile terrain. That megaton target, exceptional target, needs further testing. We found some tantalizing things there during our work program this past year as well, in that down at Three Firs, we found very strongly potassically altered copper-rich copper stock and porphyry stockwork clasts at the bottom of the drill hole. One of the drill holes we drilled there that suggests that there's a juicier porphyry system hiding down there. I think I mentioned to you, Antonio, in the past that Dick Silito is accredited with being the discoverer of the far southeast deposit, which is a large high-grade deposit in the Philippines. And he discovered that by recognizing in breccias these high-grade porphyry clasts that suggested that they were sitting below that was a high-grade porphyry system. So exact same setup there. We know that there's something there. We've got a large anomaly there. I think you've got to drill a little bit deeper. That might be something for the majors, and certainly, as you'd expect, we're talking to all the majors at the moment. BC is very much open for business, eh? We're seeing a lot of companies come in. Fortescue, of course, don't just do iron ore. They're really across the whole metal space nowadays. I would assume it's one of the biggest staking rushes or campaigns in all of British Columbian history. But a stake to the west of us at Woodjam, and it's an area that's about 40 to 50 kilometres wide by 300 kilometres long. So they've sort of staked a good chunk of the province, all based on, the porphyry potential of the district we're in. You're starting to see things heat up on that front as well.
Talk to me more about the acquisition of Rand here, though. I mean, is this an opportunistic move, or is this more of a about filling gaps in your portfolio, if you will, maybe gaps that you have been trying to fill for a while now, or is it strategic? Is it market related? What's driving your decision behind it?
Yeah, that one's something that we've been working on for a very long time. Of course, when we did the original deal to secure control of the Woodjam consolidated company, it gave us the core suite of properties that those guys had, and covered the bulk of the known mineralisation. We saw great potential around the district to further consolidate and bolt on properties. So I think we've done over 7 individual deals to further consolidate that land package. Of course, we did the deal to secure the Red Gold property, which takes us to within 10 kilometres of that Mount Polly open pit. Some interesting anomalies up there. We did drill test them, but we're disappointed with the results on Red Gold this past summer. And then Rand sits interestingly right squarely in the heart of that broader Woodjam property. The property just clips the edge of the Deerhorn and Megabuck system. So that, and then our megaton discovery sits right on the southern boundary of that Rand property. So we really wanted to get in there and consolidate that, make sure that we've got enough room to move around. And, certainly some of those structures that host that mineralisation that we see there at southeastern Megaton and then Megabuck and Deerhorn trend on through that Rand property. So we're really just continuing this, sensible consolidation of the district to make sure that we've got sort of both, all targets covered and plenty of room should we need to build a mine for all of the infrastructure we need.
Every time I see projects changing hands in already well-developed jurisdictions like BC, I can't help but wonder how come. I mean, if it's really good, you'd expect the party holding it to want to keep holding it. So how is it that you can get your hands on these properties all throughout and barely no cash component, really? It's about $5,000 cash component on this. You're issuing some shares, of course, for it, but how come? I mean, how are you able to get your hands on these properties and take them off the hands of the people already holding them?
Yeah, look, and that's sort of a good question more broadly, because that project, Rand, we've known for a long time we want to consolidate that area. I suppose past explorers have found it difficult to fund exploration work in British Columbia and for these types of systems. So we've been in a fortunate position whereby we've had better access to capital than a lot of our competitors, which has allowed us to get in and advance these projects. So that's sort of helped. The Rand itself, it was a little bit of an orphaned project. It sat within another, what became a vehicle that became I understand, a telephony company. And so they had no reason to hold on to that property, so allowed to able to get a very cheap deal to acquire that particular property. Some of the other things, we try and use our share capital wisely. I think one of the things we are starting to see more broadly in the sector is a real kickoff in M&A. There's been some consolidation in the junior space. I think you need to see more happen because there's still too many companies out there with, not much more than a soul full of hope. You're starting to see, producers. Of course, we saw a slew of major acquisitions last year. Silvercrest, Gatos, Cisco, We hear that that there's a lot about to happen again this year. I'm sort of and the word on the street is that there's a few majors about to make sort of billion-dollar plus acquisitions over the next couple of months. So I think we'll continue to see consolidation, and that's important because that sort of typically happens at the front end of a major boom. Certainly, metal prices are at boom levels, but companies aren't. But I think we're going to see M&A really kick off, and in the junior space, I think we still need to see consolidation and sensible consolidation where possible. So we do want to sort of sit at the heart of that where it makes sense.
I've asked you this about Woodjam before, but maybe that's changed now with this acquisition. Do you or any of the other team members or any of your related parties own a royalty on this part of the project directly or personally?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No, that's something that we don't do. Those sorts of royalties belong to our shareholders. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Is there a royalty? I mean, is the original vendor still keeping a royalty on it, or what does that look?
Oh, yeah. Look, there are there's that Woodjam property. I'd hate to think how many sort of deals have been brought together to consolidate all of that. There's probably bloody 20, upwards of 20 of them, and I think there's it's all on our website and in our documentation, but there's a slew of different royalties to various different parties. Not us, I must say. Previous owners, historic owners, and the like.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
What about from a permitting, regulatory, or community perspective? Is everything taken care of? If you want to go and do work on it, you can just go ahead and do it. You don't need anything special, any special approval.
Yeah, it's a great question, Antonio. It's never as simple as all of that. Thankfully, historically, we've had a lot of Bill Morton and his team there at Consolidated Woodjam did a good job of having in place any permits that we needed up until recently. I think to test some of our other targets, we've had to get new drill permits and pads gazetted. So we managed to do that, and I think that's one of the things that's sort of a real positive in British Columbia is that we've managed to be able to do that in a timely manner. Of course, most of the time that's in consolidation with First Nations stakeholders, and they've been supportive. I think Chief Willie Sellers and the Williams Lake band, very commercial, very positive. They've supported and indeed been heavily involved in the building and operation of the Mount Polly mine. So they can see the sort of benefits that communities can have from good work, of course. So it's a good place to operate in that sense, and I think that we've got all of the permits in place we need to progress this year.
I read that there's a till that's covering. Well, it's the same as with Woodjam. I mean, essentially this is part of the same geology. And how are you going to be dealing with that in the process of defining drill targets? What are you doing? IP? What else are you doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of hard to look through some of that till with your IP. Can prove kind of tricky, and we've had some positive surprises there at the southeast deposit, in that we've found shallower mineralisation with less till cover. It can be tricky to deal with. I think the good thing about it, we did some internal scoping study work on southeast and Megabuck and Deerhorn this past year. Quite telling, nothing that we can talk to specifically about. But I think, at the grades we've got there and the depth of mineralisation, we're in really great shape to have a project that will be economic here in the not too distant future with the rising metal prices. But Till's an interesting one. Of course, it's free digging. So straightforward to move, but you don't want too much of it over your deposit. There's a little bit over the southeast deposit, but not to such an extent that it really impacts the project negatively.
Hmm. When do you think you're going to have the drill targets by?
We're just about ready to go. I think we're refining those at the moment. Steve and the team and I sat down earlier in the week to look at exactly what we want to do, how many holes you need to test all of those targets. So we're very, very close on that front. So then it's really a matter of financing at some point ahead of any drilling that we want to do in a summer campaign. So that's coming. We do have a critical decision to make there. Do we go and finance for that drill campaign, or just keep the lights on? We've got around $1 million in the bank at the moment, which will last us all the way through the year. So we're not in a rush to make a decision on that front. I think we can wait and see with metal prices, see how the market's looking over the next couple of months, and then make some decisions from there.
Okay, so there's no fixed timeline, as in when you want to go and drill it and when you think you might have assays.
No, not yet, not yet. But typically, I suppose you can't get on the ground there. The priorities as we see them at the moment are that megaton on Woodjam, and then up at the southeast deposit that sorry, the Poplar deposit, the South Poplar South target. They're the two highest priorities. Really got to wait. We can access them during winter and drill them during winter, but I think that would be largely pointless at this point in time. We can wait till summer. Access is easier. There's less ground disturbance if we take that approach, and look to drill those June, July, August with the results coming off the back of that.
You did already have some news coming out of Poplar, as mentioned a couple of times already, where you announced an IP chargeability anomaly that coincides with your resistivity, as well as other geophysical and geochemical anomalies that kind of coming together essentially in one spot. Also, where you previously observed, and this is from surface work, but you observed phyllic and epidote chloride magnetite alteration. What's the internal thesis about the connection, if any, between that chargeability anomaly at depth and the alteration at surface? Is the idea that there's a connection between the two?
Yeah, so there, I suppose there is. Uh, how do I describe this? So when you go out there, there's quite a bit of outcrop there, but there's a big structure that trends northeast through that area, and I suppose at the southern end, southwestern end, we found a pit, with malachite, azurite, rocks staining on those, copper staining on those rocks. So that intrigued us. When we started to have a bit more of a look around, we noticed that there's some very strong sort of alteration, generally phyllic looking alteration. The IP, this is, and I suppose the news release we put out yesterday, people can have a look at that, but you can, the first thing you notice is a large magnetic pink blob that's about sort of 10 kilometers long. Within that, there's a mag low. And as I mentioned, you get magnetite destruction at the center of porphyry systems. So that was a fair hint. We then did soil geochemistry across that, found copper at the center of that anomaly, surrounded by a ring of base metals, other base metals, including zinc, which is a typical sort of zonation you see peripheral to a porphyry system. And then, yeah, the IP is intriguing. So you see some very, very high chargeabilities at the center of that anomaly. And if people look at figure 4, sorry, of that presentation, there's a couple of cross sections, chargeability and resistivity. There's a stonking great chargeability high at the center of that anomaly. That's a very strong chance that's associated with sulfides, and knowing that there is copper in these systems in that district, a good chance that those sulfides will be copper-rich sulfides. So it just screams out to be tested, that particular anomaly. It's a sort of you could put that one in a textbook as a textbook porphyry anomaly, whereby every single vector points to the center of it and suggests it needs to be drilled.
Well, here too, though, you're kind of hinting at it, as to how you pick the targets, but the strongest IP anomalies are covered by and maybe associated with the till cover. So, how what's the target picking strategy here? Like how do you target something here? What's kind of the internal process you go through?
Yeah, not really. No, till can give you sort of false anomalies, at times. But here we don't have any till. We're in
Okay.
pretty good shape. So yeah, no real issues. There's a little bit in these areas, but if you look at Poplar itself, it actually outcrops. And certainly here we've seen outcropping basement rock. So no real till issues. You're just sort of seeing sufficient, shallow surface issues, including a little bit of water in the area. So no dramas there. And then, to target that anomaly, it's a very clearly defined sort of 2 kilometre by 2 kilometre across type of anomaly. So you really just need to establish offensive holes across that to test the target. So, and then you just need to make sure you go deep enough to fully test the target. You don't want an ambiguous result. Here, I think you probably, you will be into the basement within probably 50 meters of the surface. So you're very quickly into drilling into rocks that will help you understand that system. And then you have to monitor these things very quite carefully to make sure you don't miss something. So you don't want a drill hole to end in mineralization, for example. That's a classic sin of geologists. So you need to keep an eye on how the drill program, how that drill hole's going, and make some decisions from there.
How deep do you think you're going to have to go?
Look, if you a good question. I would think that, the tip of that chargeability anomaly probably sort of looks like it starts 50 to 100 meters down, where you get into really high chargeability. Not to say you won't be in porphyritic rocks from the surface. We'll see as soon as we drill it. But typically these holes, unless you're seeing very continuous high grade intercepts, you drill these holes to 400 to 500 meters.
Hmm. Is that something you're going to news release? I mean, the drill targets that you're going to do at Woodjam, Red Gold, Poplar South. Is that something you're going to kind of outline in a news release, or is that not something you normally do?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, we are. We've sort of done that in a series of different news releases. So we're compiling that uh, into a slide, into a deck to better explain the targets that we have here and the fact that we do have these bloody absolutely tremendous exploration targets that are screaming out to be tested. And then, typically what we'll do is ahead of drilling come out with a news release that indicates our plan for the drill programs for the year and for the drill programs, which is coming up in a couple of months' time.
Good. The bigger thesis you have for this project, you're starting off with or I should put that as a question, but are you starting off with the idea that Poplar and Poplar South are kind of two showings of the same porphyry, or are you approaching them as two different things, kind of different centers, different porphyry centers, if you will?
Yeah, very different porphyry centers. Very, very different. It's about sort of 10 kilometers between them. I suppose if you look at that news release from the other day, figure one, you see some interesting things. There's sort of uh, a huge amount of anomalies that could be related to porphyries. And of course, if you look at Woodjam's a great example. Most porphyries, if you look at Escondida, they occur as clusters. There's a bunch of porphyries in those zones. They sit. There's a magmatic volcanic carapace, and then you have these porphyry apophyses sticking out that have come to the surface and exploded out of the surface. So you end up, and mineralization forms around those apophyses or deposits and gets contained around those apophyses. So porphyries occur in clusters typically. And here, only one porphyry's been found, the Poplar deposit itself, 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers to the south. You've got this Poplar South target. Very strong likelihood that that's a porphyry, and certainly, we've seen enough alteration to suggest that there's a porphyry center there, and I think we now know where that will be. Drilling the rotary lie detector, as we call drills, will let us know if that's the right thesis or not. But certainly there are other great targets there as well. It hasn't had a lot of work on that property. The Poplar deposit itself was found back in the 70s. They walked onto the property, immediately found outcropping porphyry mineralisation and focused on that, and then did very little exploration over the next 40 years. So we think it's a great property with huge potential to make new discoveries and in a proven porphyry terrain.
What do you want to see from the rotary lie detector, as you put it there? I mean, what is it in the assays in order to consider this program a success? Does it have to be a copy of Poplar, or what's kind of the threshold that would make you happy at this stage?
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get, do you? But I think that um, yeah, look, what are we now? I can't remember the exact number, but it's about 300 million tonnes of 0.4% copper equivalent within that Poplar deposit.
Hmm.
I think longer term, we'd be very happy to have another one of those on our books. There's a good chance of that, but you never know because, of course, like if you look at Woodjam as an example, and plenty of other projects around the world, you drill uh, Woodjam, Megabuck, and Deerhorn have hit some really high grade mineralisation there. There's sort of drill holes of over 100 metres at north of 2% copper equivalent, and then southeast. More gold rich system. So within the same district, you can have very different systems and very different tenors of mineralization. So you don't know until you drill. If the systems, you may well make a much higher grade porphyry discovery. Some of our competitors have seen that in recent times. American Eagle, of course, have got a neat looking project up there further north of the Woodjam property, where they've had some higher grade hits in some of their porphyry targets within broader lower grade halos of things. So yep.
What was the stance of the historical data at Poplar South? Like how much do you know about the project from what was done back in the day?
Oh, look, it was funny actually. But thankfully, the past explorers, the guys at Universal Copper, did a good job of compiling all of that. Because of course a lot of that work was done in the 70s and 80s at a time when things weren't digitized and paper copies were the norm for things like drill logs and assay sheets. So there's a lot of that consolidation, but we've had to, not a lot of work has been done, boots on the ground type of exploration. So we really spent the bulk of the summer traversing the ground ourselves and trying to get up to speed with what we might have there. Guys have done that very, very successfully. This Poplar target that we've got is one of the best porphyry copper targets I've ever seen. So it's a great outcome. The guys have done a splendid job.
I noticed the whole 9505, if I'm not mistaken, it's a historic hole. It was terminated prematurely. How come? Why didn't they keep drilling? And why? I mean, is it in this 3D chargeability that you're seeing now? Is that suggesting that they kind of missed it? And why do you think that?
Yeah, 9505. So that means that it would have been drilled in 1995.
Hmm.
I believe that was the all of the drilling in this area was sort of shallow RC drilling and rotary drilling generally, and that so firstly those rigs don't have the capacity to go too deep, but what they were doing there is doing a smattering of holes throughout the southern part of the area just to test really sort of top of bedrock work and getting into shallow bedrock. I suspect, and it's sort of hard to determine, but the fact that all of these holes were drilled in a very shallow nature, some of them sort of 30 to 60 meters deep, was really just geochemical sampling. So not actually looking to drill too far into the bedrock, just really looking for sniffs of mineralization over broader areas, but not actually targeting the center of the porphyry system.
Mhm.
So that target completely untested. Really, you've got to get down to that chargeability anomaly. I think really porphyry systems typically have a very large vertical extent, so you want to drill 400-500 meters into these things.
Same question as I want to ask you about Woodjam from a permitting perspective. How's Poplar South, locos and everything? Can you go up there or down there, I suppose, and do whatever work you want to do this year without needing any special approval?
Yeah, very sparsely populated there. Good supportive First Nations again. So it's very straightforward to access.
Hmm. Good, good. Well, I'm getting a better idea of what you're going to be doing. We didn't talk too much about CopperView. I mean, you brushed upon it at the beginning. That's early stage exploration. What do you want to have completed by the end of next year there?
Yeah, CopperView. Look, I think we're in a position now. We probably want to expand our IP over that target. Of course, great area, very high potential in that area for discovery. Kodiak have made several discoveries there. That gate zone sits right along strike or we sit right along strike on that mag high lineament, north-south trending mag high lineament. I think we just need to do a bit more IP work over that, but then we'll have a robust target. I'd love to see that tested, but that's lower priority than both Megaton and the southeast at the moment. Sorry, Poplar South at the moment.
Okay. So, well, okay, that's maybe a good point from how should I call it? From a priority perspective, if you will. If you had to make a priority list, what would that look like? Red gold would be at the top, then I see because you just acquired it. Poplar South, or how would that go?
Yeah, no, so not red gold. Rand isn't a target. Rand's just a property. So, we've made a discovery at Megaton. We haven't drilled the center of it. So that's priority number one. It's in a known area of very high grade mineralization and existing porphyry systems. So Megaton number one. Poplar South, given the fact that it's a multi-vector, multi-factor anomaly that in again a proven terrain, makes that a very, very high priority. I think some of the other targets in the Woodjam district, so Three Firs and the Great Plains targets, given that it's a known porphyry district with good grade, elevate those. And then the last one, perhaps, is sort of interchangeable in a way, but that CopperView target that we've got is starting to shape up to be a real beauty. And we're in a proven porphyry district. Kodiak's gate zone, sort of a large, they've had some large higher grade intercepts there. So I really like the look of that. So, to my mind, Steve might shoot me for this, but Megaton, Poplar South, and then that CopperView target are my favourites at the moment. That's where we'll spend our money this coming year.
That's a good overview, and it kind of neatly sums up the story. How do you plan to tell that story, though, in 2025 from a marketing perspective? I mean, things seem to be changing. Retail pays attention to different things than maybe did in 2023 and before that. What's kind of your marketing thinking? If you had to put your marketing hat on, what are you thinking about? How much do you want to spend? Where do you want to put it? What's kind of the core message that you're sending out there?
Yeah, in the last minute I've got here, mate, I would say, very, very simple. It's sort of still going to be an organic approach. I think, it helps. We've now got sort of a lot of good followers out there. So really just, putting out our news releases, doing interviews like this. We love to do that. I love to talk porphyry geology and targeting. It's one of my favorite things to do. But nothing I think sort of digital marketing's had sort of various effects in recent times. So not looking to do too much of that just at the moment. And really, of course, we go to the smattering of conferences. Everyone's turning up here in Vancouver today and tomorrow for the VRIC and Roundup conferences, which is always a fun time of year.
Yeah.
So we'll be at those with the team. But no huge marketing budget or plans just at the moment. It's pretty expensive. I'd rather drill holes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, suds, shut up and drill stupid. It's Sean Roos's thing. I've been stealing it for a little while, but Craig, I know you have to go now. Thank you so much for doing this. Anything I'm forgetting to ask you here at the end quickly you want to add and feel free to yeah, add on.
No, I've got to make a shout out to my favourite story in our portfolio. I'm the chairman and co-founder of Vizsla Silver, and we've now spun out Vizsla Royalty from that business. I think we're going to be building one of the world's greatest silver mines, so people should be looking at that.
Well, thank you
That's
so
an
much for sitting down with me, and maybe we'll book a Vizsla Silver interview soon. But thank you so much for your time.
good on you, Antonio. Thanks, mate.
And thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I appreciate your time. And I do have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they are necessarily a good or a bad company. I am not here to endorse or attack anyone, but simply to ask questions. If you find that I failed in my duties in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I am not an experienced interviewee, please let me know, and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business, and losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. Seriously, this is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles. Too many really to count, but they include company specific factors like geology, financing ability, and really many others, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, all of which makes this space nearly impossible to figure out. Moreover, these companies are typically in the pre revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for financing and they don't get any money of their own into the company. So they have to depend on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which often results in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online are intended as marketing, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media, the photos that they share on there, whatever else it might be, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and told you about the new hot stock, that's all intended as marketing, and you should understand that. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there's a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, I'm simply here to ask the questions. Many out there will do exactly that because that way they get more money out of the company's pockets. And you should be aware of that inherent bias. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content, yes, including this interview, just approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it or presenting it or whatever it might be is biased because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit disclosed or not. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I don't have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits, so I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. And although this might sound amusing to you, it is definitely not amusing to me, and it is not intended as a joke. I am simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say because you risk losing all of your money. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know what's going to go up, what's going to go down, or what's going to go in circles. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success. And even if they did result in a success, we don't know what that's going to do to the stock price. And given that we're talking about high risk activities here, most of the times it will result in a failure. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I'm not always going to catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So, yes, this show is called the CEO Barbecue in an effort of me being cute, essentially. And even if I did ask a few tough questions, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving particles, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business, obviously, but I'm also not experienced enough to catch all red flags. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers and listeners and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein does not constitute a solicitation of an offer to buy or sell any security or instrument or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all the parties involved in the management of the business and the production of this content from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all legal talk that I'm reading off a piece of paper, but it is important for you to actually stop for a second and understand. This is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should always do your own research after you've consulted or before you've consulted with a professional licensed investment advisor, which none of us are. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. Setterplus.ca is where you actually do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings. Now, I encourage you to read and analyze the management information circular, the financial statements, the management discussion and analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money become even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high to begin with, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's best quotes, or one of my favorite Charlie Munger quotes, which I wish I'd listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."